Good afternoon and good evening to all of you, and welcome to today's event titled The Long-Term Vision, Building the Future for Remote Areas. My name is Alessandro, and today I have the interesting role of facilitating the discussion and asking some questions, your questions, to our amazing panelists and speaker. Before introducing the panel today, please allow me to present and thank you the organizations that have brought the event today to us, starting with the European Parliament Intergroup of RUMRA and Smart Villages, the Slovenian Presidency of the European Union here present, the European Commission, EU40, and the Startup Ole. All of them, thank you very much for being here and for bringing us the technical support that we all need. And now let me present to you the amazing speakers that we have today. We have the pleasure of welcoming European Commission Vice President for Democracy and Demography, Dubravka Šuica. We have the pleasure to welcome the Slovenian Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Food, Jože Podgoršek. We have the pleasure of having with us member of the European Parliament, Franc Bogovič, co-chair of the European Parliament of the RUMRA Intergroup. And of course, welcome and a pleasure to welcome Emilio Corchado, Chief Executive Officer at Startup Ole and REINA. So without further ado, let's just frame very briefly what we are going to discuss today. Today, we are going to discuss the long-term vision for rural area, a vision that the European Commission has brought out to us recently. We will discuss how important rural and remote areas are for the European Union. But before diving into the conversation, please allow me to pass the floor to Franc, the co-chair of the RUMRA and Smart Villages Intergroup, for a first welcome. Franc, the floor is yours.
Lep dober dan vsem skupaj.
Hello, everybody. Dear Vice President, Ms. Dubravka Šuica, dear Minister Jože Podgoršek, Emilio Corchado, it's a pleasure to welcome you, especially in Slovenian language, in the beginning of a...
katerem Slovenija prevzema predsedovanje Evropski uniji. Danes smo v Evropskem parlamentu poslušali tudi našega predsednika vlade, ki je predstavil prioritete našega predsedovanja. Prejšnjem tednu pa ste, spoštovana gospod Dubravka Šuica, vi in vaša kolega gospod Wojciechowski in gospa Ferreira predstavili dolgoročno vizijo razvoja podeželja do leta 2040. To je področje, s kateri se v intergrupi, katere sopredsednik sem, ukvarjamo že kar nekaj časa in veseli me, da so ta vsa naša prizadevanja tako v Evropskem parlamentu, na Evropski komisiji pripeljala tako daleč, da po tistem, ko se je dokaj sramežljivo še najprej v Cork deklaraciji.
When in the beginning it began quite shyly with the smart villages. In 2016, when the movement started, the movement about smart villages, and we have really come quite far to constitute a long-term vision of rural areas, which is very needed. And that is why we will be very happy to hear Mrs. Dubravka and other speakers today. I am also very happy that among us there is today a startup project, and Emilio, who's going to tell more about the practical perspective, how to really turn that vision into reality. So thank you very much again for having you all here, and it's an honor to be part of this meeting.
Thank you very much, Franc, for setting the scene. And now, without further ado, please, Vice President Šuica, could you present to us this fantastic and quite interesting work that the European Commission has done that we call the long-term vision for rural areas?
Thank you, Chair. Dear honorable members, dear Minister, dear Franc, dear participants, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present to you today the communication on the long-term vision for rural areas. We adopted it last Wednesday at college meeting. President von der Leyen said in her State of the Union speech last year, she said, I'm quoting, Europe will not be whole or complete without its countryside. So I will start by saying a few words on the process. Not only have I drafted the vision together with two European commissioners, my dear colleague Elisa Ferreira in charge of regional policy and my dear colleague Janusz Wojciechowski in charge of agriculture. But almost all commissioners and all commission services have been involved in this conception process. From the very beginning, from the very beginning, our ambition for this vision was to go way beyond any individual policy area. Our vision was then, and still is today, to bring all relevant policies together for the benefit of rural areas. We came up with a comprehensive and holistic approach to produce something innovative. The result is action-oriented communication that is entirely, exclusively dedicated to rural areas. You may ask why this is important from the demographic point of view. Let us start with the fact that rural areas are home, as all of you already know, to almost 1/3 of the Union's population. We talk about 130. Some rural areas face dramatic population decline. This is often accompanied by the growing demographic trend of aging of the remaining population. Of course, I look at many issues from a democracy point of view too. We must respond to the needs of 137 million citizens to avoid that they feel left behind by the democratic institutions that serve them. And this is not acceptable. This is potentially one of many subjects for deliberation on the Conference on the Future of Europe. This is the reason why in producing this vision, we have worked not only for the rural areas, but also in partnership with rural areas. We have never before organized such an extensive public consultation, such as specific design Eurobarometer survey, or so many events which were exclusively dedicated to rural areas. So many actions on the European Union, national and local level. All this with the sole objective of ensuring a better quality of life for our rural citizens. This participatory approach is not over. With this vision, we are also launching a rural pact. In a very tangible manner, this pact brings together all levels of administration and relevant players for making rural areas attractive places to work and live. We have also carefully looked into the various challenges that rural areas face, issues like demographic change, the problem of low connectivity, or limited access to services. It is important that we create new opportunities that can make rural areas even more attractive, more vibrant, and more dynamic. Crucially, this transformation will maintain the essential character of rural areas. We explored these opportunities through the lens of green and digital transition. In addition, we are building on the lessons from COVID-19, lessons learned from COVID-19 that have also highlighted some advantages of living in rural areas. As you might know, the vision is constructed around 4 pillars, namely stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous rural areas. It is underpinned by an accompanying plan with actions rolling under the flagship projects. This plan is not static, it is dynamic and adjustable. It is designed this way because we are presenting a roadmap for next 20 years to come. So we need to ensure that there is enough flexibility built in to be able to tackle head-on any challenges that may evolve and which we cannot necessarily anticipate right now. This need for flexibility and foresight is one of the lessons of COVID-19. You will have seen that smart villages are part of our action plan, and figure prominently under the flagship initiatives supporting strong rural areas. The Smart Villages approach will continue to be promoted, particularly in the context of research and innovation for rural communities. Not only are we presenting a roadmap to follow, but we are also bringing forward tools supporting the implementation of this vision. Tools such as the rural proofing of different policies, the Rural Observatory, our Rural Pact, and above all, handbook for a better use of European Union funds. Last but not least, I want to highlight here once again how much this vision is just the beginning of the whole process. It is a strong signal to show how much we care about our rural areas, how much rural areas are our key partners in the green and digital transitions, and how all our ambitions are achievable, but only if we partner together. This is the case in all of the initiatives that I have presented so far within my demography portfolio. This will continue to be my guiding principle as we progress in developing this new portfolio, which touches on every aspect of people's lives. Dear members, dear participants, I will stop here because I'm keen to hear your comments and your thoughts. I'm also keen to hear from the Council Presidency because we very much count on Slovenia to take this topic fully on board and to help us develop in the right direction. I will introduction with the very first sentence of the communication we published last week. Our rural areas are a core part of the European way of life. This communication is indeed about who we are and who we want to be. I count on your support as we deliver on this ambition for our rural areas. I'm staying at your disposal for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Šuica. I picked up on something that you just mentioned. This vision is just the beginning. I think this is an amazing message to send, meaning that there is still some work to do, but all together we can really do this work and make a new future for rural and remote areas. You also said something that really struck my chords. This vision is achievable only if we partner together. So this is the last point that I think was truly interesting. And with this, I think the transition is very easy to Minister Podgoršek, Minister from Slovenia. Slovenia recently reached and took ownership of the presidency. So, Minister, could you please give us what are the priorities of the Slovenian presidency when it comes to rural area? Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner Ms. Šuica, member of the European Parliament, Mr. Bogovič, Draghi, Franci, dear Franci, and other guests of today's virtual meeting. I'm pleased and honored to participate in this virtual conference. And of course, I am thankful for the invitation of the member of the European Parliament, of Mr. Franc Bogovič. The topic of today's conference is the long-term vision, building the future for remote areas. Allow me to congratulate all the participants and authors of the preparation of the long-term vision for rural areas by 2040. The vision comprehensively addresses the rural areas from the point of view of various sectors. The vision was published at the start of the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU. And the file is really important for member states and also for Slovenia, for Slovenian presidency. I will talk about it a little later. Why is so important? Why is this file so important? Because when we are talking about rural areas, we know that the biggest part of European Union, of the member states, are rural areas. And also the important part of our populations live in rural areas. So it's really important that we address these questions also on this strategic way or document. So as I said already, the long-term vision for rural areas is one of the important horizontal themes for Slovenia, for Slovenian presidency during the second half of this year. And we would like to open three really important aspects of this long-term vision for rural areas during our presidency. The first one is enhancing the dialogue between urban and rural areas, and we will open this topic during our informal ministerial meeting from 5th to 7th of September this year. I hope that COVID situation allow us to do it in live, so that we can organize this event. So another one really important aspect is digitalization and modernization of rural areas, and I can say I'm really happy that we can co-organize one really important event with Mr. Bogovič, with the member of European Parliament, in the 1st of October this year. Of course, Smart Villages for Green, Digital and Resilient Europe is the name of the event, which we will do in as I said, in the 1st of October this year. And the third really important aspect is the role of women in rural areas. This is a really important horizontal topic for all member states, and we opened all these three questions also in trio with Portugal and Germany when we prepared our priorities for 1.5 years. It means for all three presidency. So this last one aspect is the role of women in rural areas is important in social aspect, is important or is crucial role for family farms. You know that we would like that, family farms are the important part of agriculture of European Union. And the last one is also we have to open the questions about the infrastructure on the rural areas. Infrastructure, or maybe on the other side, we have to prepare the conditions for equal life of women in the rural areas, and also the life of women also in the cities. So we have to connect rural areas with culture, with education, with lifestyle. So it's really important questions which we would like to open during our presidency. Okay, I think that it's enough for the start of this today event. So I will maybe explain another thing during our session. So thank you again for invitation, and I really wish all to us to have really good event today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your words. Dialogue between urban and rural cities, digitalization, women, all three are really cross-cutting topics. And I think they are really important when it comes to building the areas of the future when it comes to rural areas. Franc, I believe you are in Strasbourg now, you are Slovenian, you live in Brussels. What does it mean, rural areas, for the European Union? Can Slovenia be an example of the challenges, but also of the opportunities that rural areas can bring to us? Thank you for being with us, Franc. The floor is yours.
Yes,
I'm happy to tell you that in the last years, my life has really been happening mostly between different cities, but members of the European Parliament have the privilege to be able to return home often, every weekend sometimes, and I'm also agriculture. So I'm basically working with fruit, also some livestock, which is why this topic is very close to me. Even as a mayor, I've become acquainted with, I was a mayor of the region of Corchado. I realized how important it is, the connectivity. And in the financial perspective, 2016-2017, we have built optical connections, including 2 farms that are like 700 meters high up. The COVID crisis showed us the long-term benefits of building connections between those isolated places, because for instance, children had no issues at all to attend schools during the COVID pandemic. What we're doing now within the intergroup, and which is very important for the long-term vision of rural development, is something that I personally really believe in. I also believe that a well-being of a rural Europe will help the entire Europe, which will be shaped by a somewhat modern rural area. As I mentioned already before, the city of Ireland, the Cork, where they started talking about rural development, 20 years later, in 2016, they adopted a law that was the basis for the smart villages, which was concluded by the Commission in its previous term. And Mr. Tibor Shani and me have also prepared a document that we have here today that can serve as a great basis for the future. And this is a very detailed document. I am very excited about it. I have revised it in detail. And it can serve as some sort of role model, especially for the development of active rural area and young people in the rural areas. So as far as the vision is concerned, I really like the fact that we're all getting to know more about the remote areas, forestry, agriculture, and so on. And if we want to keep continuing developing it, all sectors must participate. We must elaborate a joint agriculture policy, and each strategy should include a strategy of smart villages. But we are working mainly on connectivity, energetic transformation, and social issues, such as long-term care of elderly people, coexisting of different generations, where this is perhaps more visible. We're talking about transport, education, research. So I'm very happy about this approach. And I have to say that our intergroup has invited many of these non-governmental sectors to hear their opinions, their suggestions, what would they like the Commission to know and be aware of. So the first conclusion of all this is especially gratitude that we have this document, this long-term vision of rural areas, as well as gratitude for all the support that we are receiving and that we are really connecting on all levels. It's not just a measure of European Commission, it involves people who live in those areas. And if we continue collaborating so closely, progress will be possible. It's also important that which has already been worked on in the past years, we need to receive good parcels, and the Commission has to build on those parcels solutions, new approaches that can be put in action, especially in those countries where they have not been doing this so far. So, of course, usually we have to touch the question of money also. And there was a bit of a flaw that we have accepted this vision after we have already adopted several other agricultural policies. And this is why we must find a way to use and implement those recommendations. So that today, in all new financial measures, we will have the possibility to get funds. This is a good basis for the following financial perspective, and I'm sure that those who are aware of the significance of rural areas can do a lot already today for the future. There are questions related to mobility and new solutions that those areas need. The questions are related also to how to enable internet access in practice, how to simplify it. Questions relate to the classifications of rural areas with different needs in different areas, and in some way also the desire to implement as quickly as possible the rural action plan. And the last comment that I want to make, which is more or less a question, how to include in this, in the Bauhaus project, also the renovation of buildings, and how to carry out the energetic transformation. Because in many areas, access to gas and heating oil still remains a bit questionable. So we have to make major improvement in these areas. Thank you, Ms. Šuica, for your presentation. I am very excited about the 1st October event, which was already mentioned. And we're also discussing, and I believe that we will all together successfully present this long-term vision in Expo, 2nd of November, between 10 and 11. We already have booked a table where we're gonna present everything that's happening in this area in Europe to others. Not just Europe, but to the rest of the world, as there will be guests from other continents as well. So thank you again, Mr. Podgoršek and Ms. Dubravka. So I'm now passing the word to Mr. Emilio, who will present his point of view about the long-term vision of rural areas.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank, for the comment on this. And, you know, I share with you the gratitude on the importance and the timeless of this. As a person that actually lives in a rural area and comes from a rural area myself, I share with you the same needs and the same wishes. Now, as Frank just mentioned, I would like to give the floor to Emilio. Emilio, Vice President Šuica earlier made a statement that together we can make this vision a reality. And you represent a part that is very, very important to the making of this vision a reality, which is the civil society, the startup, the innovation. You, as a startup Ole, are behind the REINA initiative. So this pan-European initiative that helps rural areas, what is it all about? Can you please tell us why the bottom-up approach is working for you?
Alessandro, Vice President, Minister, member of the European Parliament, hello to all of you and also to the audience who are following us today. And congratulations to all of you for such a great and inspired contributions. I also say again hello to the Vice President, because he was with us in the launching event in April for REINA, and this is an example of working all together, right? So, well, you know, our perspective is as follows. We have to ensure that the recovery from the actual crisis, which has to be based on, of course, on technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, and startups, take into account the rural communities as in the same level as cities. And this is why we are promoting a REINA initiative. REINA stands for Rural European Innovation Area, supported also, as we say, by Vice President Dubravka Šuica and Commissioner Gabriel also, and Startup Ole as a community, as a whole. And it is a platform created to reduce the gap between the two versions of Europe. On the one hand, the thriving urban one with big cities like Brussels, Paris, Milan, Madrid, and on the other hand, rural Europe, and most of the time depopulated and lacking in possibilities. So our aim from REINA is to bring together relevant actors of the rural innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem, such as investment funds, corporate, public administrations, local government, county councils, and universities. And of course, connect this side with the startups, innovative SMEs, local action groups, and all kinds of rural platforms. Our ultimate goal is to generate projects and synergies that produce wealth in rural areas in order to promote job creation, reverse the population, ensuring a better quality of life and services for the inhabitants of these areas. When we talk about rural areas, we refer, of course, about agri-food, livestock, or tourism, but also sectors as telecommunication, mobility, or sustainability, which are really close to the rural aspect and to the rural areas. And of course, we talk about technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, drones, and of course, the creation of startup villages also. We are also focused on attracting and retaining people in rural areas. Then REINA also support startups, providing good quality services related to education, health, information, cultural content, news, security, ensuring the well-being of inhabitants in such areas. REINA is focused on executing tangible actions to generate synergies among different actors, among different players, with activities such as matchmaking. This is, one-to-one meetings, having in one side of the table startups, and in the other side of the table, investors and corporates who have already reviewed the metrics and know properly what are the needs and what is the offer. So we do such matchmaking. And of course, also pitch competition where startups and innovative SMEs related to the rural scenario present their project to those who are interested. All of this is perfectly reflected in the manifesto, in our REINA manifesto. The launching event of the REINA initiative last April was an important starting point for us. And being here today with other key players and representatives of the European Union, Commission, Parliament, and so on, is also another great step, promoting the spirit that we were advocating for. The manifesto includes a total of 17 measures, grouped into 5 main lines of actions, which are as follows: skills and talent, culture and mindset shift, connecting innovation actors, attractive work-life environment for young professionals, thought, leadership, and monitoring. Examples of those tangible actions are establishing rural accelerators and incubators, promoting tax incentives for entrepreneurs, establishing a European Rural Innovation Center, establishing online platforms to create dense network of innovators players, and few others. Of course, in the REINA platform, we have been able to gather so far 100 partners, and the number is growing, more than 30 investors and corporates, and 200 startups, trying to connect them in the proper and a very curated way, and organize so far more than 100 one-to-one meetings among them. Next meeting will take place under a startup event in September in 2021 in Salamanca, Spain. And of course, you all are invited, because as we said, this is about communities. This is about working all together and growing all together. Alessandro and all of you. Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you very much, Emilio. I'm really excited. There is going to be the event in Slovenia with the minister and Franc Bogovič. There is going to be the meeting in Salamanca. So we're going to travel and we're going to make really this vision a reality. Now, thank you for giving us, Emilio, your point of view and your expertise, your know-how. You guys really try to bring together different perspectives, and from those perspectives try to find out success stories, best practices that can change the future. You mentioned a few things that are interesting to me, and I would like to go back to Vice President Šuica to ask her, an overall comment, and also ask her a quite specific question. Vice President, you mentioned that we want vibrant, connected, and sustainable rural areas by 2040. This is not an easy task. It's going to be challenging, and we like a good challenge, but also it's not going to be easy. So my question is, the vision now is quite clear. It's very interesting. How can we make this vision a reality? What are the concrete steps that we are facing in the next future?
Thank you for this question. I was listening carefully for all participants today, and I know that this will definitely be a challenging task. And this is the reason why we put together almost all services to come up with a plan and with necessary resources to help rural areas realize their full potential. This is what we want to achieve. I was listening to Slovenian Minister, Mr. Podgoršek. He said urban-rural dialogue. I'm completely in alignment with his priorities. Then he mentioned that digitalization. Then he said, then he was talking about the role of women in rural areas. So all three issues are very important. And as I mentioned earlier, we learned lessons during this COVID-19 crisis. We saw the advantages of living in rural areas during this COVID-19 crisis. This is also to take into consideration. But we also have to admit that there is geography of discontent. And this is what I touched during my introductory speech. This is playing out in political terms. Our ambition is that vision is to turn the concept into a genuine geography of opportunities. So when you know that my portfolio is democracy and demography, both issues are very important when we talk about rural areas. Someone might ask, what does this have to do with democracy and demography? But as I said, many people who were interviewed who live in rural areas said that they feel left behind. So democratic processes are important for them, but they don't take part into democratic elections. They don't use democratic institutions. And this is the reason why we want to come closer to them through the Conference on the Future of Europe, to see what are their problems, although we already tackled some of these problems. So for us, it is very important to, when we talk about connectivity, yes, Franc, it is intermodal transport, but above all, there is internet connections. So if we want to create new jobs, we have to connect, we have to have broadband internet all over Europe, in each and every village of Europe, be it on the islands, be it in the mountains, because nowadays, I don't ask you where you are, but I ask you how well you are connected. And this is the motto of not only of COVID-19, but COVID-19 highlighted this. So your question was how we will do it. I already said, in partnership with local, regional, national, plus European authorities. This is the only way how we can make these rural areas vibrant, dynamic, and also connected. So we have, these are not empty words, but there is not one size fits all. All rural areas are different, they are very diverse. So it depends on our communication, our cooperation, and it really depends on local authorities. It is very important who is mayor or who is councillor in your town, in your municipality, in your city. Then you can go, okay, in Slovenia there are no regions, but in Italy there are regions. Then with national authorities and then with the European one. This is the reason why I mentioned earlier Rural Pact, Rural Action Plan, but I also mentioned handbook for better use of European funds, because now we put all European funding under one umbrella, because sometimes it was not easy for people who live in rural areas to find out which fund to use. So this is very important. And as I said, we envisage rural proofing, rural observatory, and this handbook, as I already said. So this is long-term vision. It cannot be solved in 1 month or 1 year or one mandate, but we want to work strategically this time. And we, as I said, this is huge potential, rural potential of our Europe, and 137 million people, many people young people need to come there. Also young farmers. But when we talk about rural vision, we don't think only about agriculture. We think beyond agriculture. For us, we think that rural areas can be pleasant places for living, for our young families, for young people, if we have all services there. If not, then people will again move out to urban areas, and there will be this rural-urban divide, which we don't want. We want to make these people who live in both urban and rural areas closer. This is how we look at this. But of course, it's not easy, as I said, challenging task, but it doesn't depend on Commission. It depends on all of us. And this is the reason why we took into account all stakeholders, and why we are trying to have this dialogue also with you today, but with many others. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you for invitation to conferences. We will see how this fits in our calendar, but I'm ready to talk to you, and I'm ready to invite you to take part in the Conference of the Future of Europe, because this will be a very good podium, very good forum for people who live in rural areas also. So to come to digital platform and to explore all possibilities which are offered by the European Commission and by European institutions there. So this might answer your question.
Thank you, Vice President. Absolutely, you put a lot of meat on the table, as they say in Italian. So thanks a lot for this. I will go back to Franc, who's actually was a mayor. So when you mentioned a mayor, I'm really interested. But before, let me just ask a quick question to Minister Podgoršek. Minister, the Vice President is clear. Together with European member states, local communities, we are trying to build this vision, which is not an easy vision. It's not a short vision. It's really looking forward. Now, Minister, my question is this one. We have both challenges and opportunities ahead of us, and I would be curious to know what is the status of play in Slovenia. Is Slovenia an example? Can it be an example when it comes to the way that you approach the rural life simply?
Okay, thank you for the questions. I will answer in Slovenian language because this is one of the beautiful language of European Union, like Mr. Bogovič practices. So, slovenski prostor, slovensko
In
podeželje
Slovenia, in our rural areas.
Just a second. Sorry, technical problems. Slovensko. Okay, I think that now is okay. Yes. Slovensko podeželje se sooča.
Slovenian rural area is facing many challenges as well as opportunities for development. I completely agree with with other speakers that it is a wider question. It's not just a question of agriculture, of a joint agriculture policy. In Slovenia, in the resolution of our food, our sources from the year 2020, we have clearly defined the development of the rural areas is a domain of many sectors, from environment to infrastructure, education, including agriculture, of course, which means that we are aware that this area can be properly taken care of only if we join our forces. Our rural area is facing, as I've already said, is facing some structural issues. For example, the population is aging much faster than in the cities. We have a larger share of old population, young, active people, and those with perhaps higher education are moving out of the rural areas. It's very typical for Slovenia that certain areas with worse transport connections and logistic connections, people are moving faster out of there than from the other rural areas where the infrastructure is relatively good. In some areas, that really impacts the level of the growth of population, which means that with a good approach, we could find opportunities for development of these areas. We can also claim that in rural areas, we meet a somewhat lower entrepreneurial activity than in the cities. There's more poverty, especially in case of older population, because in Slovenia, poverty is most common for females older than 65 years, and in particular in women in rural areas. So this is a very specific challenge that we must address also within the framework of this wider development of rural areas. And as we already established, in Slovenia, the rural areas also represent a great opportunity. As the Vice President has already mentioned, the COVID situation highlighted that rural areas are perhaps the places of the future where there will be a smaller, lower density of population, and there can be good conditions for handling situations like COVID. There's smaller transmission rates, for example, on one hand, and on the other, with the knowledge, creativity, innovativity, and last but not least, the points mentioned by Mr. Franc Bogovič regarding smart villages, we could convert rural areas into the engine of development. And that's the opportunity that we must insist on and realize in the Slovenian rural area. Another thing, development of these areas also represent a great major part of tourism, because tourism due to COVID will not soon return to what it once was, to mass tourism. So we are now facing more, people are searching for more individual experience, local. So they're traveling to close by rural areas, and this can be a phenomenon opportunity. And this is one of the issues that we are addressing in the strategic plan of the new agricultural policy, and we will continue to push this topic in other areas, other cohesion tools and activities. We know that in this area, if we really want to exploit fully all the options, even in Slovenia, we will have to, I mean, it's the only way, we will have to work together, all the sectors. We have to approach this issue together. But I am quite confident in this moment to say that the greater part of Slovenian rural area could be some kind of a role model for the rest of the European Union. As I already said, we have 2 million population, and more than half of our population lives in rural areas, which means that it is a vital, active area of the country. And I think that we could be an example of good practices of creating conditions that enable quality living in rural areas. And to finish it perhaps with a little bit of a joke, even when we talk about biodiversity in the European Union, I'm almost certain that the creators of biodiversity in the time of creation of these strategies have been living in Slovenia. So I think we could be some kind of an example. And of course, the rural area with its way of functioning, the way of living of people, it's always contributing to this biodiversity.
Thank you.
Especially in Slovenia. So yes, we could be one of the key players. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Apologies for interrupting you. We are almost out of time, so I wanted to really have a nice conclusion to this debate. Before going back to Franc and Emilio, I would like to give the floor to Vice President Šuica, because I know she will have to leave soon. So, Vice President, let's start with you with a series of final remarks before I move to the other great panelists. Vice President, we had a conversation today by bringing together 3 institutions, the European institutions, European Commission and European Parliament, and then the presidency of the EU. I think this is the beginning of an interesting effort. You know, together at European level, we can shape policies that then have to be adapted and implemented at the local level by local politicians, by local communities, as Emilio was mentioning. So, as a sum up, what are your wishes and what are your hopes for this to happen? You mentioned it's a long vision. Can we see some results in the short term at some point?
If I may say, the whole purpose of this vision is to empower, to strengthen rural areas, to create new momentum for them. This is the goal of this long-term vision. But I want to come back to Emilio, because I'm absolutely subscribing the idea of entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders. I think that they are very important, because without them, our rural communities won't be powerful enough. So I totally subscribe European Innovation Platform, which he was mentioning. And our ambition is to create platforms highlighting the importance of innovation in order to solve rural challenges for future opportunities. So we want to make rural areas also fit for future, as we want to make our democracy. So I think that this is a good opportunity to group different European initiatives supporting rural business. And I think that without startups, this won't be possible. So this is definitely bottom-up approach, although you mentioned 3 institutions, but as I said, we also need national authorities, but the most important ones are local authorities, local leaders, who will be willing to implement this, what we are saying, to use these flagships, to follow Rural Pact, to follow action plan, and this is very important. So I want to thank Slovenian presidency for making this important file during their presidency, and looking forward to cooperation with my dear colleague Franc and with all of you. So thank you for invitation. Thank you for letting me be part of this vision, because we cannot work anymore from Brussels bubble. We want to be close to you, close to our citizens, and this is our ultimate goal. And my portfolio is all about this, about people, demos, democracy, demography, both about people, about people's lives. And I want to thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you very much, Vice President, for being with us today and for giving us your insights and your knowledge on this. I'm sure this is the beginning, so we will work together again in the future with all the parties involved. So thank you very much. And now I would like to pass the floor to Franc first and to Emilio later. Franc, we've discussed about bottom-up approach. And you've been a mayor of a city, then you've been minister in Slovenia, now member of the European Parliament. How's the link between all these institutions? How can we make sure that communities are empowered when we talk about something as big as a vision for rural areas at European level? How can we really dive deep into how to make Slovenia, for example, a fit for the future rural area?
Alessandro, hvala za to vprašanje.
Thank you for this question. I'm happy to tell that I was a mayor and I still live in rural area. And even before the COVID crisis, I organized in Slovenia over 30 roundtables where talking to people all over Slovenia, as well as in Croatia, Hungary, and other countries. We were discussing this strategy, the concept of smart villages, and we all concluded that so many good things has already happened in the Slovenian and European rural area. I'm also happy that after that, in the European Commission, some people were perhaps a little bit surprised. What are you talking about? And we have received the message of the European Commission that foresees the Rural Pact and the activities of the following several years. So I think we've come quite far. And if we can say that in the past, it was the smart cities that have made a breakthrough, it is now the smart villages. So what is important? It's important to have local action groups, people on the field who are preparing projects, who are cooperating and are perhaps the engines, the drive of this development. And we already said, and in the common agriculture policy, agriculture has been added and emphasis has been on environment, where agriculture plays an important role. This is where we're trying with the funds of the common European agriculture policy. We have a project in Poland, and this is how we also try to attract other capital by giving some of our own funds. So today we are discussing connectivity, mobility, energetic, and of course, digital connectivity, other funds. And this is the power that we have now, but it has to be waken up from the bottom up so that the country will recognize, the states will recognize their importance. So I do not want to be too long. Thank you very much, Mr. Šuica, for this time we spent together, and Mr. Podgoršek, thank you for being with us. Thank you, Emilio, and your team, of course. And Alessandro, thank you. And to everyone who is looking after the young ones, this is how we were able to join our forces today. It has been an honor.
Thank you very much, Frank. I got the green light that we can go on other 5 minutes, so I would like really to take this opportunity to ask a couple of more questions, if you all agree. Emilio, I wanted to go back to you, picking on something that Frank mentioned. We need to be overarching. We need to look at a variety of aspects when we talk about rural area. And when I was reading the REINA Manifesto, it's absolutely stunning, and it's absolutely great to see such a good lineup of things that we need to do. It can feel, however, overwhelming when you look at how many things we need to touch to build the vision that Vice President Šuica was mentioning earlier. So how do you feel about this from a startup approach?
Well, at the end of the day, what we are doing is communicate with the community, right? So we don't do anything. I mean, we just listen the ecosystem, the different players, and we take on board all what is needed, because those players are the ones really touching the ground. And when you have a great amount of players and partners having clear what is needed and what are the steps to go further, this is what entrepreneurs and the ecosystem do. I mean, you have what is needed, you define the plan, and then you execute it. And this is the idea now. Try to have as many players on board as possible to execute. And this is what we are trying to do in our events, where we go really right to the point, where we are trying to get connected the different players, the offers and the demand, what is needed, what is on place, and accelerate such connection to move further. Of course, you have been talking about connectivity, entrepreneurship, women, and I think it's also relevant to give some success cases, Alessandro, in a fast way, because at the end of the day, we do all these activities to achieve outcomes and return. And let me give you one example. It is not direct connected with REINA, because REINA was launched in April. We had already many one-to-one meetings, reverse pitch and all things. So they are getting mature now, and for sure there will be outcomes soon and success cases to mention. But one previous success case is related to rural innovation and the rural vertical, which we are supporting since ages ago in startup areas. We gather a lot of players from rural areas and so on. Is the following one. There is a startup in a small village by luck close to us in a city called Doñinos, in a small town called Doñinos. The CEO is a lady called Adriana, and the success cases is as follows. They came to Startup Ole a couple of years ago because the county, the province government with the Startup Ole invite the most of the startups and innovative SMEs in the province to come to Startup Ole and to connect with investors, corporate, international, worldwide. And this is what exactly they did in a proper way with a lot of talent. They met a venture capital called Caixa Capital Risk, which from time to time operate with the CDTA from the Spanish government. So they both put money, invest money, or acquire different startups, and they went to acquire 40% of such a startup. The startup called Meal Food now is called Tebrio due to the new players. And the numbers, the figures, which is the relevant, is as follows. The investors acquired 40% of the whole company, and due to that, the new company Tebrio, is going to invest 50 million euros into new infrastructure, new buildings complex, and what is even for us more relevant is the fact that they are going to hire more than 200 people from the countryside. So this is something which is, I think, could stand for a great story, a great success story, and this is what we want to talk about. It is really relevant to have the plan, to communicate, but I think it's now time to execute and to put all of our efforts to move forward and to get all connected, because there is money, there is talent, there is need to evolve and to grow in the rural areas, and this is what we need to do, to work together and move further.
Let's execute now. I like this motto very much. Fantastic. We are arriving to the final bits of our event today. I would like to ask all the speakers in 30 seconds. I will be very, very sharp on this, not to keep all of you. What is your takeaway after this event, and what is your wish for the future? Let's start with the minister. Minister, please.
Hvala za besedo, zelo kratko.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. We really want that the whole European Union would recognize rural areas as very important areas in every state member. And we want active collaboration with active stakeholders with all member countries when we will be addressing these issues. Thank you very much on my behalf for the organization of the event. And thank you, interpreters. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Minister, for being with us and for giving us your inputs and insights on this. Emilio, please, 30 seconds. What's the one wish that you would like all of us to take away?
Well, let's work as we are doing. Let's work all together. Impressive having these players focus on rural innovation, and as we say, let's work together, let's carry on planning, but let's put a lot of effort on executing and supporting really the rural areas to go to the next step and be more appealing and attractive, and helping them to attract wealth and generate jobs there.
Thank you very much, Emilio, and thank you very much to Startup Ole for being with us. Franc, you have the last bit as well. I would like to ask you your last impressions, also in light of the more than 100 people that are watching this. Some of them might be from rural areas, so some of them might have answered to Vice President Šuica questions when she asked, how do you feel? And they might have said, we feel a bit lost, we feel a bit left behind in rural areas. So what's the wish from you?
Jaz sem ponosen človek s podeželja.
I'm a proud man from the rural area, and I can confirm that it's a privilege to live in such place. And to make this privilege accessible to more people, we just have to start working. Just like Emilio said, time is on our side. I'm a big optimist. We have awoken this awareness in Europe about a systematic approach to rural areas. COVID only highlighted this necessity. So I'm quite optimistic about it. And I believe that those forecasts in which they said that in 2050, approximately 70% of European Union will be living in the cities, I don't think that will happen. But I think that the number of people remaining in rural areas will increase. So thank you very much to all of you for the event.
Thank you very much, Frank, and thank you very much to all the speakers that were with us today. We now lead to the conclusions of this event. I think there were a lot of insights and interesting points of view. As Vice President Šuica mentioned earlier, this is just the beginning, so it's a long-term vision. So we advise all of you to get in touch and to be part of the discussion to make this vision a reality. Let me also thank all the people involved behind the screens, starting from the interpreters. A big thank you to Startup Ole for putting together all the technical side. A big thank you to Adam, Beatrice, Mona, and really everyone that built this. Also a big thank you to the Smart Villages and Rumra Intergroup of the European Parliament. A lot of members of the European Parliament are really working to make this a reality. Thank you to U40 and thank you to the Slovenian presidency that will have an important job ahead of us. So with all this, I wish you a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all, maybe physically in Slovenia, maybe in Spain. We will see where, but for sure, I'm sure we will be able to work together. Have a nice day.